Earlier this week, the Boston Athletic Association announced that the 2026 qualifying times for the Boston Marathon are going to be quicker. In general, they're about 5 minutes quicker per age group. And I know that this can be very frustrating for a lot of people. This last happened back in 2019 when I was actively chasing a Boston qualifying time. And it can be tough, especially when you came close to hitting the standard, and then now all of a sudden you're a lot further away. The reason they did it is because there's just a lot more people running and they're getting faster for a bunch of reasons. People are running more. The shoes definitely have an impact as well. And if you look at the cutoff time to get into the 2025 Boston Marathon, you actually had to be about almost 7 minutes quicker than the standard. And so the idea is just like in 2019, when you lower the standard time, hopefully you don't have to reject anyone, because I think that's always the most frustrating part of the Boston qualification standard. Unlike um, the New York City Marathon standard or the Olympic trial standard, is that if you make the Boston standard, it doesn't mean you're in. You have to exceed it, and I think that's frustrating because you don't know how much faster you have to go be. So hopefully, by lowering the standard, the idea would be that fewer people are rejected. Again, you had to be 7 minutes faster this year, so lowering it 5 isn't perfect, but hopefully it does send it in the right direction. But that doesn't help you if you feel like now all of a sudden you're even further away from the standard. So I just want to give a couple thoughts in my experience when I was actively chasing a BQ time. Um, Four things that I thought about when I was getting close, but I wasn't quite there yet. And maybe some of these things are what you can implement into your training going forward if you want to go after that goal. So the first tip is, if you don't have a running coach, I consider getting one. For years, I just use a training plan that I got out of a book, and I think that works really well. But in my experience, when I got a running coach, that is when the coach was able to push me further. I remember having a conversation with him where I said he had workouts that were under 7 minute mile pace. And I'm like, I could never do that. That's crazy. And then all of a sudden, eventually I'm running marathons at, much below that pace. And so a coach, I think's job is to see where you're at and push you further. And it's tough to do that to yourself. Some people can. That's amazing. I couldn't in my experience. And so a coach really helps you push to unlock that next level. So if you don't have a coach, um, I consider getting one or looking into it. There's a bunch of places that you can start. I'm happy to provide some recommendations. The second tip is mileage. In my experience, running more miles helped. And I know this is controversial because there's so many different ways you can train for a marathon. And I don't know what is going to work for you. But what I will say, in my experience, when I was able to consistently increase mileage, and a lot of this mileage is slow, easy mileage. It's not tempo workouts all the time. It is a base of just a lot of miles. That seemed to produce the greatest fitness for me when I was in that 18 to 34, 34 to 39 age bracket, which is really competitive to get into the Boston Marathon. I think when I was running my best, I was consistently putting together, at the peak of training, weeks that were either 3 weeks of 80 miles or 3 weeks of up to 90 miles a week. And that seems like a lot, even as I'm sitting here today. But when you build up to and you're able to go do it and you create your schedule to create that time, it really helped me. And so if you haven't considered unlocking mileage in your training plan, if you're maybe running 60 miles a week, it might be worth considering, could I start running 3 to 4 weeks in the plan at 70 miles or some bump to that? Because at least in my experience, that really helped me unlock that next level of marathon fitness. Okay, all right. So the third tip, and I think a lot of you probably have thought about this, but the third tip is going to be, consider the race course you're going to. If you really are trying to get the Boston Standard, at some point it's probably worth thinking about which course do you want to go race at. And not just courses that have the right profile, right? There are many courses that are fast courses because they are flat. There's not a lot of hills. That's worth looking into if you're looking to qualify for the Boston Marathon. But what I would also say is just like it's hard to run on a course like in Atlanta, for instance, it's hard to qualify for Boston and the Atlanta Marathon. It's a very hilly course. It's not impossible. People do it all the time, but it's more difficult than, say, going to like Houston or CIM or Indianapolis or someplace where it's more flat. Consider the course not only for the profile, but also the time of year. Running a course like CIM or Houston, which are typically almost always in the cool weather, is great. Whereas Chicago sometimes can be hot, or even Grandma's Marathon, like that can be hot. And so the profile is important. Also, the time of year, so that you can get the weather right. If you run better in the fall, in my experience, I run a lot better in the fall and in the early winter when it's cold outside. So that helped me. But also, the third reason you want to choose the course, aside from profile and the time of year, is the pack of people you're running with. One of the things that's really helped me is when you go to some of these bigger races, or when you go to races that are BQ geared, you end up finding a pack of people that are also trying to run your pace, whether it be 2:55, 3 hours, 3:05, whatever, right? You're going to start finding a pack of people, maybe even a pacer, that are running that group. And so instead of running 26 miles where it's just you and maybe somebody else, or maybe it's just you by yourself, you might find that there are 30 other people that are running. And when I've had some of my best races, I feel like I've been in a pack of people for 18 miles, wasn't even really thinking about the pace, was just running, and then dialed it in the last 8 miles or last 10 miles to really go after my goal. And so having a pack of people is also important. And that is a part of choosing the right race. And the fourth tip to getting that BQ, if you're not there yet, is I think it's time to really start thinking about your daily nutrition. And what I mean by that is that almost all of you first think about the nutrition on race day. What are we going to be drinking at the aid stations, the electrolytes, the gels? That's incredibly important. And so I would imagine most people have that dialed in to some extent. Where I think most people, at least in my experience, spend less time, and this was my experience as well, is in your daily nutrition. Because especially as you get older, you need to recover longer. And so things that you can start doing nutrition wise to help you recover, I think is another unlock for a lot of people. And so what that looked like for me was actively looking at my carb intake and protein intake after I did a workout because I needed to replenish those stores to be able to go run consistently the next day, especially if you're increasing the mileage. Not eating after workouts is going to be an issue for you, for most people, if you want to consistently put these good workouts back to back together. And so that's something to think about as well is what are we doing every day to help recover from the workouts? What does our protein look like? What do our carb intake look like? What does the overall mixture of carb versus protein look like as our base meal plan? Again, this is another topic. People have a bunch of opinions. In my experience, a more carb loaded plan was really helpful because the end result is you start creating a body composition which is geared towards running long distance. My coach has always told me, don't spend a lot of time thinking about calories and things like that, but he's like, limit alcohol and eat healthy. And then it tends to kind of work out yourself. I think that's decent advice. And then also your supplements, right? One of the reasons I started Peregrine Runner multivitamin was that having antioxidants, having vitamin B's for energy really helped me put those back-to-back workouts together because that's how you create a great race day. It's not just one good workout, it is 12 weeks of good workouts. And so being able to perform every day and train gives you the best chance of going after those goals. Okay, so those are the four tips that I would have to help you get that BQ. If you're there, if you're frustrated with the new standards, just in summary, one, if you don't have a coach, consider looking to a coach. The second one is look at your mileage. Um, how high is your mileage? Can it go higher? That's often the unlock in my experience that helped me. The third one is look at your race course, not just the race course in terms of the profile, but also the time of year and the pack size. How many people are running it around your time? And fourth one is your daily nutrition. The best way you're going to have a good race is not just the dialing your nutrition during your workouts in the race, but you need to be able to put not one workout together, but 12 good workouts together. And the way you do that is to making sure that your daily nutrition, what you're eating, your supplementation, etc., is helping you recover so that you can train at that level day after day after day so you can put those 12 good workouts together. Best wishes on chasing your BQ goals.